Hi, and welcome to Oaks Midweek. We're so glad to have each and every one of you with us here today. We had such an incredible response to our last and most recent series on racial reconciliation that we're going to continue the discussion. We've had 3 episodes so far. We're going to create a number of more discussions and episodes out of this topic with our guests, and it's going to be really great. Some great content today. So go ahead, click that share button if you are able to, and spread this message around. I know it's going to bless you and so many of your friends. Let's pray, and we're going to jump right into our discussion. Father, thank you so much for your love. Thank you for your goodness, your mercy, and thank you for your wisdom. Father, would you help us? Would you speak to us today? Give us your wisdom. Help us to hit the points that you want to hit. And God, speak to the hearts of your people, awaken their souls and revitalize them, and help each and every one of us to have real and lasting life change. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, let me reintroduce you to my friends. This panel is made up of people that are trusted friends, advisors, people that I seek wisdom from on a regular basis. And so I'm really excited to be able to have the opportunity. This is Kevin Brown. Kevin Brown is a local businessman and a very close friend of mine, someone that's been an advisor to me for a number of years. I've had the pleasure of doing weddings in his family, funerals in his family, been known all of his kids, and a really, really great friend, and someone that has been just a wonderful business advisor and ministry advisor as well. Jimmy Hatton is part of our church and a good friend as well, has an amazing story that I'm really excited for you to hear about today of his dedication to the urban community in downtown Pittsburgh and how he raised his kids and developed an incredible culture inside of his own family for restoration. And then obviously my friend Nike, Dr. Nike Aina, is with us again this week. We're missing Jeff this week. He had a conflict, so hopefully we can get Jeff back in the future. But Nike has multiple doctorates and has a practice with she and her husband, and has a lot of incredible wisdom as well to share with us. And we've had some great conversations. I want to start off today, and I want to kind of pick up a little bit. I really want to spend these next couple of episodes getting into solutions and talking about how the church can be a part of the solution, what the roles and the responsibilities are on all sides of this, so that we can bring real lasting change. We don't just want to talk about something and then go back to life as usual. We want to really bring some lasting change. I also want to jump into, in just a moment, something that we dove into in the last couple sessions where we talked about the anger and the culture of anger and some of those things that are present in our day and age that were different in the previous civil rights movement. But let's start with the topic that I just mentioned, as far as basically the way that you kind of raised your kids, Jimmy, is what I kind of want to start with, is how when you and I want to hear the story a little bit about what you did in downtown Pittsburgh and how you connected your kids into the cause and how it affected their life as well.
Well, we got, we were involved in inner city church, as I mentioned, and our kids just kind of grew up there. It's interesting now that we're having these conversations. I asked them recently, what do they remember? What did we talk about? And they couldn't really put a thumb on anything specific because it really was, our life, and they were just immersed in it. A little bit about. I got involved because I love to play basketball, and basketball was a good entry, easy way to have a conversation, get to know some people, and we did it through the youth group there at church, which was a large portion of the young men there were black, and so we had a league and we had great success there. But what I saw happen was that for the few white folks that went to the church there and their kids, when they graduated from high school, they either went to college or they had something. But I saw this void for the young men who at 18 really didn't have anything but the street. Mm-hmm. So I went to the church and I asked them, could I create something, just an open basketball night for those outside 18 years old. And the church was, because we had a gym. The church had a gym right in the center of the projects, essentially. And they were like, that sounds awesome. We can't really help you. And you'd have to do it after hours, after ministry hours. I said, that's fine, I'm in. So essentially they threw me the keys to the church, and 9 o'clock was the earliest I could get in. So I started this basketball ministry at 9 o'clock in the inner city of Pittsburgh and opened it up, and I told some of the local folks that I knew, and soon word got out, and I would have 50 to 60 young men show up at 9 o'clock to play basketball. They represented different gangs, they represented different neighborhoods, but there was a common theme of basketball. And we only had one rule with the church, was we were always creating a loving atmosphere. That was it. That was the only rule. I didn't have security. I didn't have any help. I didn't have anything. It was just me with the keys and a basketball.
Right.
And some Gatorade. Sometimes I had some Gatorade. And we would play, and then I would give a message, halfway through, give them a break, and I talk to them and introduce them to Jesus, really. And it was a wonderful experience, and I never felt scared. I never felt threatened. I would drive a bunch of them home in their neighborhoods. I never felt concerned. We would go to Burger King on the way home, and because I always wanted something at Burger King. And on occasion, one of the guys I'd pull up to go down their street, and they would say, "Coach, you need to stop here. I'll walk the rest of the way." And they would protect me, but I didn't really understand. I didn't ever felt concerned about it. But just to give you some of the background of some of the guys, there were a handful of folks. There was a young man named Terry. He always went by a name I can't repeat here, but I was the only one who called him Terry. And Terry had lots of personality, and he wasn't showing up. And I was asking about, anybody seen Terry? No, nobody would say anything. And he finally came back like 4 weeks later, and I'm like, "Terry, where you been?" "Oh, I got shot, sorry. Sorry, I missed a few." And he showed me, and he had a couple here, and then I saw another one, the scar. He was like, "Oh no, that's an old one," and it was just that's part of their life. There was another young man, and he would come, and he's probably, I would say, 26, 27, and he was a good point guard, and he loved to play, but I never felt like I was getting anywhere with him. And we'd talk, and he really wouldn't talk to me, and he would kind of leave right away. And then one day, I remember I was given a talk, and I was talking about when Jesus was talking to the disciples, and was saying, "Hey, who do people think I am? What are you hearing about me?" So I tried to relate it kind of cleverly to them. I don't know if it was clever or not, but anyway, then I said, the important thing is, who do you say that I am? And so after we got done, he came up to me, and he was kind of emotional. He's like, I just want to really thank you for what you're doing. No one's ever done anything like this for me. And what you said tonight really mattered to me. And then the next day, he was arrested for murdering somebody. So they had found him. He had been coming as a murder suspect, playing in my basketball, and it was a gang-related thing, and I never saw him after that. And there are too many stories that I can tell where somebody would show up, and the next week they weren't there, and because they weren't alive anymore. So my kids grew up going to birthday parties and going to funerals. And it just became part of that. So, often on a Sunday morning, I would run into a bunch of them. I'm like, "Jump in the van, come on, let's go home." So I'd be driving home and look in the rearview mirror, and I've got my two little girls who were about this big at the time, sitting in between two 6-foot, black guys, and I got the car crowded, and that's the life that they remember. So those kids came when my daughters graduated from high school. They came to their parties. They were part of my life, and so we just invested in them. And it was, I don't know, I get emotional talking about it because I love them, you know. Sorry.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you raised great kids. Kevin, you also have some great kids and that I've had the opportunity to know. And we were talking earlier about how not only are his kids mixed, mixed races, but they also are just very eclectic, from athletes to intellectuals to artists and musicians and all that type of thing. What are some of the ways that you raised your kids intentionally? And I do want to dive in as we go into that, the difference how you grew up and how your parents taught you. You mentioned last week about the anger thing and how to deal with that. And Dr. Nike, I would love for you to speak to that as well. I know, Jimmy, you had mentioned some thoughts of some discussions you had with your own friends about the culture of anger and how people are dealing with it right now in this time. But could you jump in there?
Yeah, so our family is different. It's a blended family. So Georgina was married before, and I was married before. I had 3 kids. She brought 2 boys. The 2 boys were white, and the 3 kids that came with me were mixed. And then Georgina and I together had Maddie. So it's a very eclectic group. And so one of the things Dad used to always tell me was, you speak your mind, but you live your heart. And so, and when I asked him what that meant, he said, when you're raising your kids, they're gonna pay attention a little bit to what you say, but they're gonna really hone in on what the family dynamic is and what the family life is like, and not so much what we're saying, but what we're doing. So we didn't talk a whole lot about race, to be honest. You know, they could see that they were different, and Georgina and I intentionally wanted them to see that as normal. We intentionally wanted them to understand, I'm growing up in a house that looks the way God wants it to look.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, some of us are a little darker, some of us are a little lighter, some of us have beautiful hair, some of us don't. But you know, we just didn't talk so much about race. The difference where it did come into play was the conversations that I had with Matt and Mikey, you know, about driving cars and all those. Look, keep your foot near the brake, don't go too fast, you know, and, you know, if you get stopped by the police, you know, just yes, ma'am, yes, sir, whatever it is. With Alex and Colin, it was a very different conversation. Yeah, with Alex and Colin, it was, if you get stopped, you gotta already have everything ready.
Yeah.
Because you can't be reaching for anything. It is smile on your face, yes, sir. Your goal, Matt and Mikey, is hopefully to get out of a ticket. Alex and Colin, your goal is to get home alive. So that's the only time racism really came into a discussion in our house. Because outside of that, you know, God blessed us. God blessed them. They didn't feel it as much. We talk about it today, and so if you know, I trusted God that they wouldn't feel it as much. So why would I be the one to introduce them to it? When it did come about, we just had conversations, and we would just say, you know, like my dad told me, you know, he said, Kevin, you can't get angry every time someone calls you an N. Because you're going to be angry your whole life then. And so when incidents would happen, I would just simply tell them, how much power are you going to give this person over you? And when are you going to reclaim that power back? And so, look, just forgive and forget, go on. That means you have to make a decision sometimes about who you hang out with. Okay, you know, I always tell him, you know, Jesus forgave everybody, but he didn't go back into the Romans and Pharisees after he came, you know, after he was crucified and say, hey guys, let's go do this again. But he forgave them. Okay, but so you discern and you start breaking things out and picking your friends better. But I think there are so many challenges that they were going to have in life. Between 2 daughters and 4 boys, I just didn't want race to be, you know, one that we brought to the forefront.
You know, it's interesting as you bring that up. I think about the beginning in the garden with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and how much God wanted. Adam and Eve at any moment could have eaten from the tree of life and been eternal, but they didn't. They got intrigued by the knowledge of good and evil, and God never intended. He wanted them to stay in a place of innocence. It was let me handle the evil, right? I don't want you to worry your head about the evil, you know, kind of a deal. And so that's people right now in our culture. Everything's about the evil, right? Then all the news, everything's about the evil, which seems like on some ways it's the opposite of what God really wants when we're instructed in Scripture to think about whatever's pure, whatever's holy, whatever's righteous, whatever, all of that type of stuff. There's a focus in our culture right now that is that goes against some of the things, even though justice and us standing up for justice and we mentioned last week about reconciliation and nobody wants to. We're not trying to reconcile things back to how it was when America was formed. We want to reconcile it back to how God designed it initially, right? Mm-hmm. Because inside of Adam and Eve, inside of Noah and his wife, all of the colors were inside of these individuals in their created form, right? So Noah and his wife, the belief is that their 3 boys were 3 different colors, and one of them fathered the African nations, one of them fathered the Middle Eastern nations, and one of them fathered the Caucasian nations, and so they were all inside of him, right? So there was a unity of all colors at one point in time. Mm-hmm. So when I'm talking about reconciling, it's coming back to God's original design, not what America was really all about in the first place, right?
And the only thing I would add to that is when we start talking about racist tendencies, we're going against the DNA that God put in us. Mm-hmm. Think of it like this. If you go into your closet, you see different color pants, different color ties, different color shoes. You go into your backyard, you see different color flowers. You want a different color car. You want different colors all through your house. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, color I want just one color when it comes to my skin. Mm. So it goes against our DNA, right, to not want to have diverse colors, to not want to express ourselves and live that type of life. And that's what tells us that this is more spiritual than anything else.
Jimmy, I want you to mention the story that you mentioned right before this, and I want Pastor Nikkei. That's your new name, Dr. Nikkei. It's Pastor Nikkei now. So, but you had told a story about a friend regarding anger and the power that it had in his life. And Nikkei and I have been talking almost daily. We've been texting and messaging, and I really appreciate you engaging me. I think this is one of the most important things is that we keep talking, having real conversations with our real friends about this, right? It's not going to go away. You mentioned last week, we're not going to fix this. There's not 3 steps to fix racism, right? This is a lifestyle that we've got to learn how to live and engage and understand how we offend unintentionally and are blind to it, right? So if you could mention that story, and then Dr. Nikkei, if you could.
Yeah, obviously the anger that's being felt is justifiable, and for me to speak one way or the other is naive. But what I've noticed, with some of my friends back east in their posts and our conversations with them, it's that they're owning the anger, and it's their anger, and they won't let me into it. Mm-hmm. Like it's not your anger, it's my anger. Mm-hmm. And they share that anger with friends that look like them, but not friends that look different than them. And does that anger, while it's righteous in a lot of ways, is it being funneled and fueled to do something positive, or is it just continuing this divide almost because we're separating? This is my anger, you can't have it. Mm-hmm. And I don't have an answer for that. It's just what I'm seeing, and I sense, and you can certainly see it, that and I think the enemy uses this too. Like, I want to keep fueling that anger because mm-hmm. it continues to create separation. Mm-hmm. I want to fuel it because I can get a political agenda accomplished, because I can use that anger to something that I want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And I just, from a church perspective, can we have honest conversations? Right. I want to acknowledge that. I want to understand it. Right. And I don't want to say let's move past it, because that's kind of the white response. Sure. Like I'm not saying move past it. I'm saying let's use it constructively. Sure. And how do we fix some things?
Sure.
Well, I think it's important to talk about the anger, and I like the fact that we're all saying it's not sin to be angry.
Right.
Have you ever thought about why Moses was the guy that God picked to set the children of Israel free from the bondage of Egypt? This guy had so much indignation and so much anger about the exploitation of these people that he didn't even know were his own. As far as he knew, he was Egyptian. So he was literally the white guy with the megaphone at the Black Lives Matter rally. And he wasn't just that. He was the first one to actually pick up a fight. I mean, you have to remember, he killed an Egyptian. Now, please don't say Nikkei said, we can go out and kill people. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is he channeled his anger in a negative way in killing that Egyptian. There's no doubt about that. But God, as we know, looks on the hearts of men. And he saw in this man's heart something that said, this guy is angry about this enough that he's the guy that's going to get the job done. And so I think that a certain degree of anger and righteous anger, righteous indignation is necessary in order to get the job done. I think it's important that we don't just stay angry, that we use that, we channel it to bring about change, change that really matters. And everybody talks about bringing about change, but how's that going to happen? What does change look like? I think one of the things that white people may be seeing, whether they're Christians or not, and see as anger is people not wanting to engage. Not wanting to engage with you, even though you've loved them your whole life, and they know that must hurt you quite a bit. But I think one of the things that people are seeing right now is a lot of Black people, and I can't speak for everybody. I mean, a friend of mine passed some comments about some of the things that I said in our last session that she totally disagreed with. And I'm glad that she did, that she shared her thoughts. And she said, we're not monolithic. And that's true. So I can't speak for everyone, but I think that a lot of Black people are saying this is about one thing. It's about police brutality is what we're talking about right now. Don't bring about, can we be friends? Don't talk to me about, can we be friends? Because we're friends already. That's not an issue. Don't talk to me. Don't deflect from the issue by talking to me about black on black crime. I don't want to hear it. That's not the moment. Don't talk to me about, and I think it's these other things, these deflections, or people bring politics into it and they say, oh, it's the other party or this other group that wants you to think what you think, which we as Black people, again, I must remember to say I as a Black person, I see that as an insult to my intelligence. If you think that I cannot think for myself and that what I'm saying is based on propaganda by one party or the other, Pastor Joel and I exchanged a text. He sent me a video and I responded and I said, both parties are bad for us. We need to find one of our own, or start one of our own.
You wanted the Jesus party.
The Jesus party, and that's what I told him. I said, because both sides, and people send you these videos that show you another Black person that said something about how systemic racism is not real. So I think the anger you're feeling and you're hearing is one of people who are saying, don't talk to me because I don't think you understand. I still love you. I still love you. Nothing's changed between us. But I don't want to mess up this relationship because I don't want to hear you deny my experience. And I think that's something that we really need to think about, that the anger we will help the anger if we don't deny people's experience by pretending that systemic racism doesn't exist. So when your friends hear you say things that imply that you maybe didn't realize implied that, they're not going to engage. So I think it's all of those things that we're seeing happen. And when you talk about the anger also, there's another issue with that is don't think that white people should not think Black people are angry with them specifically.
Right.
And I think it's important to make that distinction. You are my friend. I'm not angry with you. We're texting each other every now and again. We're not angry with you. We're angry with the system, with a system that's oppressive. And so when we're talking about the oppression of the system and people start to deflect from the issue and say, well, don't feed the hungry children. Let's not talk about the hunger problem. Let's talk about the lack of access to medical care. You guys have people dying. More people are dying from lack of access to medical care. So please don't bring food and make food the issue. That would be stupid. But we hear people saying that all the time. Like this black on black crime. Why don't you talk about that instead of this? Well, one is hunger. The other one is lack of access to health care. We're dying from both of these things. Somebody's engaged in one of them because God's chosen this as the moment to deal with this one. And you're saying, no, let's not talk about that. Let's deflect to 50 other issues. No, we want to have laser focus on this one topic right now, because handling things one thing at a time is a lot easier than trying to tackle 700 problems that are in the black community at a time.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm asking this question about systemic racism because of some of my experiences. And just for me personally, and obviously someone could easily say, well, it's because you're white. I believe and was raised to believe that the system is built to help me succeed. And you would probably say, well, yeah. Okay. So my question is this: how? Because I have multiple friends that came, whether they came from Mexico, from India, from Asia, from Africa, came here. They're not they're not white. They came here with nothing. First generation immigrant came here with nothing. Nothing. Started at the absolute very bottom. But they saw America and the system in America as opportunity and the land of opportunity. And so I'm talking people that are way wealthier than I am, that are first generation in this nation, that started with absolutely nothing. None of the structure that I had, none of the privilege that I had, yet somehow, are they just anomalies? Or is there some way that some people are able to, inside of a system, I'm just trying to figure out where in the system, because you can't rip all of America down, so where in the system where do we fix it? Where do we change it? Where do we, that kind of thing? Because again, I've got a friend that came from Ethiopia, escaped a communist regime, started with nothing. His dad has not worked anywhere except a grocery store for the last 35 years, and they're way wealthier than I am. And he didn't even speak English when he got here, right? And it's one of those wild things where I see people that are either they're anomalies and they overcome the system that is set against them somehow, or there's a perspective that they have that enables them to navigate through it, or I just don't understand it. And so can you help me understand that?
I can only give you my experience. And you might have a different experience. Boy, how do I say this?
I'm not going to get offended. I'm asking because I'm not. I won't get offended.
I would never. This country, from the beginning, once they went and brought the black people on the boats, set the rules against those people. My father-in-law, who just passed, Georgina's dad, was a Cuban. He came out of Cuba in 1961-62. He was one of the last Cubans that got out of the Castro regime before they shut it down. He came to America with the clothes on his back. They took his watch and ring. That's all you could have, is just the clothes on your back, no money. He comes to America with his wife and Georgina, who's less than a year old, doesn't speak the language, comes in the middle of the 1960s. So he comes in during a racist time and builds a family builds wealth, builds a legacy that I'm a part of now. So the question is, why was he able to do that, and black people who are here today aren't? Why is someone from Ethiopia able to come and do something that is harder for a black person here? It's because the system that we grew up in was, I don't like the word systemic. I like the word intentional.
Okay.
It was intentionally against us. It was intentionally set up against the people who they brought over. And you know, you always hear people say, you know, and this is the one thing this is the only thing that people could say that could ever hurt me, is when they say, well, why don't you go back where you came from? I didn't want to come here in the first place. Okay, you brought my ancestors here, and once you decided we couldn't be slaves, you're saying, well, why don't you go back to where you came from? That's the system that was set in place. And so you think even with reparations, you know, it's a dicey topic, you know, as to should people receive reparations. Here's how much it was set up against black people in this country. When during the Native Americans got over $3.5 billion of reparations and land. The Japanese, who were interned during World War II, got about $1.5 billion in reparations. The Jews from the Holocaust got over $5 billion from the United States and from Germany in reparations. The slave owners who owned slaves as part of the Emancipation Proclamation to give up slaves got reparations. They got $300 for each slave that they set free. We're the only ones who got nothing out of it. So the whole system is intentionally set against a people. And so there's only two ways you can react to that. You can react with anger and say, I'm screwed. This system is set against me, and just be angry about that, and just live your life mad, and every time something happens, see, that's what I meant. Or you can sit there and say, the system is set up against me. That's my lot in life. And I've got to fight through that. And those are the only two responses you can have. And the people who sit there and say, this is my lot, it's not fair, I don't like it, but I'm going to be successful, will be successful. And the people who decide, I'm just going to be ticked off, are going to be ticked off. I mean, it's sad, but that it really boils down to that.
Can I ask this question? And I'm just seeking understanding. My friend, I have lots of Nigerian friends. I've done multiple Nigerian weddings. I've got lots of friends from Kenya and Ghana. My friends that come from there and now are here, and they're here by choice, not by enslavement, but they're here by choice. Is the system set against them because of their skin color?
I don't think so, because they're coming out of an environment where I don't think you felt oppressed when you came from Africa. They're coming out of a different mindset. They're coming out of a different upbringing. They're coming out of one of pride that hey, I am somebody. This means absolutely nothing to me. And then when they get here and they're told, hey, this means something, they reject that. They just say, no, I am who I am. But the people who have grown up here, they're saying, I am who you tell me I am. And that's what they have to reject.
So I'm glad, I'm really enjoying this, because this is helping me a lot. With that answer, then if someone that rejects the label, rejects the system, says, nope, I know who I am, this is who I am, I'm going to succeed in this place no matter what you say about me. If the system doesn't oppose them, but it opposes someone who allows the label, I'm trying to understand, is it then a system, or is it, and again, if it's a mindset, then it's still the fault of the people that enslaved and hurt and did horrific and all that type of thing. I'm just trying to figure out, what parts do we burn down And what parts do we not burn down? And how do we move forward if there are people that have the wrong skin color but reject all the labels and succeed and thrive anyway, no matter what the system is, they're going to rise above it, versus someone that has been beaten down and can't break out of that prison of oppression and hurt and all of that. And it's horrifically wrong the way people were treated. It's horrible. It's horrible. And I can't possibly wrap my brain around it or understand it on any level whatsoever. I just want to be a part of a positive solution moving people forward.
Yeah.
I'd really like to speak about what we're talking about when it comes to systemic racism, because I'm one of those people that came from another country and succeeded here. But I am not blind to what's going on with my sisters and my brothers, and although I cannot speak for all of them, I can tell you what I see. Mm-hmm. So when segregation happened, Black people had to live in particular parts of town. Mm-hmm. So what happened when they were desegregated? Did they all move and go live with white people? No. It wasn't like, oh, here's my house. Now that, there is some desegregation going on, I'm going to move into that other neighborhood over there because I have the finances and the wherewithal to do that. You have to remember that the people were beat down. The people, when they started their own businesses, when they did all of these things, they got burned down. These people had nothing, right. And so they were relegated to a certain part of society. And so they remained there, and they might be trying to get up again, but I'll give you a very good example using one family unit, hypothetical family unit, to help you understand why the system is set up against these people. So we have a couple. They have 3 children. But their income is very low, and they live in this other part of town where everything is crowded, where the schools are bad, where they can't send their kids to another school, where the kids can't really get a decent education. Mm-hmm. So they go to school, and they have great goals. They want to go to college. They want to do all of these things. Come to time to fill college applications, these kids don't have time for extracurricular activities. They don't, because their parents don't make enough money, because they're stuck in that part of town, and they're trying to move up to that other part of town where the school's better, but in the meantime, they have to go to college. In the meantime, they have to help mom and dad pay the bills. In the meantime, they have to get a job after school. Mom is not there to really watch the kids because she's got to work. Dad goes out, has a very small minor thing, gets locked up in jail. So now mom has to look after the kids all by herself without the influence of a dad, which is kind of important in a home.
Very.
And so now we have the kids in a single parent home, and we have the little girl who the little boy is talking to when mom's out at work at 3:00 in the afternoon. She has to work. She doesn't have a way of paying for after-school care or anything like that, the kind of luxuries that the people on the other side of town take for granted. Mm-hmm. So this child is here, little boy talking to her, touching her. She's enjoying the attention. She falls for it. One day they sleep together. Now she's pregnant. She can't go back to school. System set up against her. Now she has this baby to care for, and she wants to go back to school, but mom can't help her with the school because mom's got to work in order for mom to pay the bills. So it goes on and on. I could tell this story and take it 7 million different ways. This is what systemic racism does. So the other older brother tries to get a job, but he's from that side of town, and the guy that interviewed him is kind of worried and scared because the people from that side of town are not really safe. Whether they're really safe or not really safe, he's not sure, but he's heard that, and he's biased. So that's where bias and racism, when we were saying there are 2 different things we have to think about. But the bias is there, right? So this is a poem now that's going in the wrong direction. This is what systemic racism does. Why is it different for someone like me? So we come and we typically some people have one person they know in the U.S. maybe. They're going to go live with that one person. So they start out with a roof over their heads, right? So they start out going to look for a job.
Support.
With a support system that the other people who were born here do not have. So that support system plays a big role. The other part is when this goes on for generations and with people around you, you don't know that you can, sometimes you don't know you can do better.
True.
That's another part of it. But it's still because the system is against you, which is why I am so proud of what Ivy League colleges are doing now. They're saying the essays are the most important thing in your application. I'm going to look at your grades, but I'm going to look at your grades in the context of your life. Now, that's how to stop racism. That's how to stop bias. That's how to do something about the problem. So they're looking at this kid who is a single mom. Her grades are not as good as the other kids. She passed. Her essays show that she's a smart person. She's making a difference in her community in different ways, in her church in different ways. And the college application, the college admissions officer picks this kid over another kid with better grades, and people start screaming about affirmative action and how it's not fair. Right? But what the admissions officer is saying is that other kid did better because their mom and dad could afford to pay for college prep classes. They could afford to get them tutoring for things that they didn't know. So this other kid with the better grades is not a better student. They just have better opportunity. They have a better support system. They can actually focus on homework instead of looking after their younger sister.
Right.
And so they're putting that into consideration, which I think is great. But that's how the system is set up, is that these people continue to be disadvantaged because of the situation.
Sure.
Now, mindset. I wanted to say something about mindset. So I'll tell you a story from my family in Nigeria. I have a cousin who lived with my parents. He was being a real rascal. His mom couldn't handle him. He was living the life that you didn't want your child to live. And he couldn't get into college either, surprise. So his mom came to my dad and said, I don't know what to do about your nephew. Tells this whole story. My dad said, tell him to bring his stuff and come live over here. So my dad calls him, and he comes to our house. He becomes a part of our family. I'm going to cut out the rest of the story. Today, he's a qualified accountant. He's a very successful professional. And one day he told me, he said, Nike, let me tell you something that you probably don't know. I went to college because of you. And I'm like, how? Never talked to the guy. He said, there is this exam in Nigeria you have to take in order to go to college. It's kind of like the SAT, sort of. And he said, I had never met a person that took that exam one time and passed it. I had never met a person where I live, the part of town where I live. I have never met anyone who took all these college exams, did the equivalent of the SATs, and graduated and went straight to college. I just never saw it. And he's significantly older than I am. He said, when I saw you, I'm like, this little kid, she's going to college? How? And for the first time, I took a second look, and I realized it's possible. And then I had a dream, and I chased that dream. And I've accomplished that dream. And if I never came to live with your parents, I would never have known that it was even possible. Yeah. So this is what's going on, is the lack of support means that they can't do the things that the immigrants are able to do with the kind of support system. They come from the African Americans are in a very individualistic environment because that's Western culture. All of these other cultures are not individualistic. Right. I mean, we probably had 15 people who lived with us in our home at different times. So we support.
So they create their own
way.
structure. Okay,
yes.
That makes sense. Thank you. I have another. You provoked another question that I'm going to spring on you. And again, I'm asking questions. Listen, I'm asking questions at the risk of being seen as the white guy asking something he shouldn't be asking, and I'm doing that. I'm taking the risk, guys, because we got to talk about this stuff, and I'm hoping that I don't offend anybody with my questions. But if we're not gutsy enough to ask them, we can't have real conversations. Okay, so at the risk of that, what you just said really helps me, because another one of my friends came here from Mexico illegally with the coyotes, almost not the animals, the traffickers, coyotes. I said it wrong. I almost died in the wilderness. Got here, but once he got here, living in a house with 14 or 15 other illegal aliens that were here and doing odd jobs and whatever, and from that worked his way up. And someone one day said, man, you've got some real talent and you've got something in you, another worker, another Hispanic gentleman, and said, I think you could be a manager. And all of a sudden now this guy has the opportunity to be a manager. Now this guy owns his own company, massive business, way wealthier than I am, younger than I am, and came here with literally nothing in his pocket, almost died. I mean, the whole deal. But he had that infrastructure. He had a 15, 16, I mean, he knew no one in the United States, but he got into a house with a couple handfuls, 3 handfuls of people, and had some sort of infrastructure or someone else is trying to help them up the ladder type of a deal, okay? So thank you. That really helps me, because that's something I would have never seen before. My next question is this, okay, because I want to come back to the system thing, because that's the biggest thing. To me, it's one of the biggest trigger words, and it's one of the things that it's the hardest for Caucasian people to see, right? And so I'm going to keep digging on it. Your kids grew up on the right side of town. Your kids grew up on the right side of town, have all the structure, have all the opportunities. You've got a kid going to MIT, right? So your kids have had opportunity. Is the entire system still set against them? Because they have structure, they have mindset, they're not in poverty, they're not on the wrong side, they're on the right side of town. I want to understand what part of the system is still to this day completely set against them? Or is it individual wicked people with hate in their heart that use their power in whatever system that they're in to hurt and oppress and hold people down? Or is it, because to me, I'm looking at the laws, and are the laws in themselves, is the Constitution itself about race? Or is the Constitution and laws colorblind, yet we have people that are wicked in their hearts and they interpret and use their authority in a bad way? That's what I'm trying to sort through. And I know that's a big question.
Yeah,
but
it's a lot of questions. It's a lot of questions. So let me go to the last one. You said, is the Constitution colorblind? No, it's not. When black people first got here, we were considered 3/5 of a human being. So no, it's not colorblind. Second of all, what part of the system is set against us is the justice system.
Okay.
I can overcome racism. I have friends who I love, who I know are racist. I just don't trust them, but I love them. But I know I can't count on you to a certain extent, and that's just discernment. God gives us that discernment. I've interviewed in the 80s and 90s. I can't tell you how many times I went on an interview, and they said, "Oh, we don't hire blacks," but they didn't say the word blacks. They said something else. I've had people say, "Oh, if we had, there was nothing in your resume that told us that you were black. If we had known that, we wouldn't have called you in." I mean, they're that blatant about it. But I still had become a CEO. I still have, started my own company.
Right.
So you can overcome that.
Right.
What's hard to overcome is the justice system.
Okay.
And this is where it really, really hurts. You can go and do something, and then I can go and do something. You'll get smarter. I'm going to jail.
Okay.
Yes.
but you can hire a better lawyer than I can. Will that help at all?
Not right now. A good friend of mine, Steve Foster, was over at our house last night, helping us, with what's going on with Georgina, and we were talking about these things, and he's white, and he was talking about the things that he did as a young man that got the police involved, that he got out of, that would have absolutely put me away for years. And so it's the system. The system, the justice system knows the way. This isn't popular. This isn't. Nobody wants to hear this. But the way to keep black families down in this country is to take the dad away. Yes. And that's why it's a lot of black men who are in jail for the tiniest of infractions. Did they screw up? Yes. Do they need to be sent away for 10 years? No. And because they're sent away, now the whole example that you gave is what happens and what gets propagated. Right. And the system knows it. That's why I don't like it saying systemic. I like saying intentional. It is intentional that they say we can take the black man out of the family, put him somewhere else, and now force the kids to grow up without a father. And I don't care, black, white, green, polka dot. If dad's not there, life just got harder for you to grow up. Right. And so that's the intentional thing that has happened even to this day, and it's the justice system. Okay. It's not. I can overcome any individual racism. It's hard for me to overcome the justice system. Can I ask you a question about a really interesting statistic that I heard this week that was about African American marriages in the family structure? And one of the questions, or one of the things that, and I don't know the cause of it, and I hope that somebody here may know. I can tell you. But like so 65 years ago, 80 to 90% of African American kids grew up in a home with two parents, and now it's the statistics almost opposite. It's like 70% of African American kids grow up in a home without two parents. So since the civil rights movement, we've seen a massive shift in the percentage of kids that have a two-person home in the African American community. Help me understand how that happens. Because if you look at the statistics, you've seen a dramatic uptake in how many black men go to prison. Okay. And if dad's in prison, then Kevin doesn't learn how to treat a woman. Right. Kevin doesn't know how to interact with other people. Kevin goes out and gets a woman pregnant, leaves her, goes and marries another woman, gets her pregnant, leaves her because dad was never there to instill the manly, godly image and water that seed. That's intentional. Yeah, and that was one of the most, in my just looking into some of the historical realities behind slavery, that was some of the most insidious things they did to destroy the family unit. Hundreds of years ago, that was an intentional thing to emasculate, to confuse, to destroy, I mean, I can't even mention, the things are too horrible to mention, the things that they did to African American men and women and their families and all of that to destroy that unit. Obviously, that's got to me. That's somehow the answer for the future is restoring families, right? For the long-term future, we have to find a way to heal, restore, develop, recultivate positive, healthy, wonderful families inside of the community. And that's why I look at this as two problems. You started to touch on this, but that's why I look at this as two problems. There's racism, which is a spiritual thing that's going to take us generations to fix. And then there's the justice system. There's police brutality, which is so easy to fix. It's scary. And the fact that we haven't fixed it tells you it's intentional. Right. I really am at the point, I don't care about racism. I care about police brutality. Okay. That's what I want to talk about. Right. That's what I want people to focus on. Solve that problem. I may have to fight harder to get a job. Solve this problem, I won't get killed. Right. That's how I look at it. Or a family being broken up unjustly. Absolutely. Right.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining with us. We're so glad that you're a part of Oaks Church Midweek, and we hope that you spend time with us on Sunday, on the weekend as well. I want to pray for you. Thank you for sharing and for your generosity and for being a part of this ministry in every way, shape, and form. Father, thank you for this time. We give you praise and glory and honor. Thank you for the wisdom that was shared on our panel this week, and we look forward to more wisdom to come next week as well. God, we love you so much, and we're grateful. Father, change our hearts and help us to be a part of this beautiful solution. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Thank you for being with us.